That'll do. Who cares? I don't care. It doesn't matter to Jesus. Doesn't matter to Jesus. Do you think it matters to Jesus?
Dude, I saw that new artwork and you look just like Jesus.
The new artwork of Jesus, like, I've been seeing a lot of AI art lately, which has been intense. Been doing the Chat GTP as well. Have you tried Chat GTP yet?
No, but I'm thinking after I spoke to you recently that I actually need to start using ChatGPT for writing my episode descriptions, because every week I'm sitting there in my studio scratching my head like, man, what do I type
say?
here?
Yeah, because what you can do is then you just like put in the the name, what they do, and then just ask it, can you write a small blurb, and then it will give you the framework. And you still got to edit it after that, but it's easier to edit something than it is to construct it.
Exactly.
Right? So totally recommend it. People tell me I shouldn't talk about ChatGPT that way, but it's a really good tool. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
Look, man, I'm skeptical about AI. I don't know where it's going to take us, but I mean, right now it's a tool. If it's handy, it's handy.
Well,
right?
I don't know if it's truly an AI. They call it an AI. Really, all it is an algorithm that draws from the internet and has the ability to form sentences. It doesn't mean it's sentient in that sort of fashion.
Well, it only works off the information that you feed it.
Yeah, and I suppose we're like saying that it's plugged into the internet as this algorithm, therefore it knows everything we know. So essentially, when you're talking to ChatGTP, you're talking to humanity. Like, that's what it is. You're not talking to a computer that's coming up with those ideas. Those ideas are pulled from people. So I don't know if it's a true AI in that sense. It's not coming up with concepts, and like it's not coming up with E = MC squared.
No, but it's not yet, because it's only just starting. It needs us to feed it that information before it can start using that information for itself.
Yeah. Well, they're starting to pull in other information into it soon. I think when because version 4's out at the moment. Version 5, because version 4 only draws on text that's on the internet. Version 5 will draw on video and image as well to collate answers that you ask it. So that's an interesting force. I don't know if it's a bad thing though. I don't know if we're at we're trying to hunt Sarah Connor just yet.
I don't know, but I think we should be listening to Elon Musk and being very careful about things.
I don't know though. Like, if you think about the irony in that, Elon is the guy that financed ChatGPT.
And so he's the one that's going to know the dangers of it, correct?
Well, there's also the argument, I guess you would call it the Oppenheimer argument, If we don't build a nuclear bomb, the opposition will. So if they, and we're talking about supercomputers that could potentially do stock manipulation. Like, there's some high-end stuff that this software can do. And I imagine it has applications that are beyond even our own wildest dreams. So we have to do it. It's one of those things. It's the Oppenheimer problem. Speaking of which, there's an Oppenheimer film coming out, which I'm excited about.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's got what's the guy mean? The cool Batmans. Did Inception. Nolan.
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. Yeah, so Christopher Nolan's doing it with the guy from Peaky Blinders, and he's Oppenheimer.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, man, it looks really, really good. Hey, man, do you think we're ready to go and jump into the show or what? What do you reckon?
Whenever you're ready, man.
All right. And welcome to the Pagey Train. Today I have in the studio with me Nathan, a podcaster from Not So Secret Dad's Ministers, and a budding and fellow conspiracy theorist. Welcome to the show.
It's been a while, my friend.
Yeah, man. It's been a journey.
4 years now?
Yeah, it's been 4 years, man. It's been a journey. We've both been on a journey in that time, But you've gone out and started a podcast. Not So Secret Dad's Business. I've had the joy of watching it grow, and the joy of watching it expand, and I'm just glad I had some part in that influence, man.
You did, man, because I was working here with you for a little while there, and we both had a love for podcasting when we first met, and so having worked with you was really cool, because I learnt a little bit more about media and what I was looking at. Like, even just with an audio wave, looking at the screen, I learnt a bit more what I was looking at. And so for me, man, it was like after I'd left and
COVID.
did what I had to do. COVID was a hard thing too.
Yeah.
I was bored, but I'd caught the itch, and I was like, I've got to do something. And I think it was about 12 months I was talking about doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And my sister ended up buying me a condenser mic, and she said, I'm tired of hearing you talk. Just do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. I just...
Well, with your experience doing it, though, because, like, when you start up, you have an idea in your head about what you want to do. And, you know, so you pick a topic that is something that you want to engage in, right? So, you know, Not So Secret Dad's business is about, you know, fathers and their experience.
Yeah, it's a fatherhood podcast, really. The one thing I learnt about 7 years ago is that there's nothing or no support out there for dads. Like you think about, there's always mummy and me groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's nothing there for dads, no support. And I didn't really have a whole heap of close friends myself who were fathers themselves, so I didn't know who to talk to. So I thought, as a podcast, it would be cool to connect with other dads and talk about dad stuff. And the whole idea behind the title, Not So, being in brackets, is that everybody always talks about secret men's business or secret dad's business. And it's like, you know what? Like, we've got to get together as a group of dads and talk about stuff. And so it's not so a secret.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good name, man. I think for what you're doing, I think it's really... I think there's a space there for it. And I think you're right about that. Like, we do look after a whole bunch of other people, and don't get me wrong, we should. But I think dads are sort of the forgotten ones, aren't they? They're the guys that go that he'll be all right because he's the bloke in the house, right? This idea of which is leaned against in a lot of gender politics, but there's still the idea that what are the networks for men? What are the networks for men for boys to become to men? I think society has changed so much in the last 50 years from that nuclear family model to the model that we have now, which is quite fragmented. If you talk to any individual about their family status, you're going to find a myriad of different arrangements, from single parents to shared parenting to parents that have joined a family or people that have had they're on their second marriage with their second set of kids. There's different attributes, and those attributes really come from I believe the feminist movement. Women going into the workforce and the changing dynamic of what the workforce is. Because it used to be the blokes that used to just go to work and and would fulfill those gender roles, but all of those things have been eroded. And I think during that process, the assumption that men are okay is sort of where we've been forgotten.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but because there are more women in the workforce now than there were, say, in the 50s, 60s or 70s, even the 80s, and going into the 90s, I guess, is that fathers have a more integral role, more hands-on role nowadays than they did in any other generation.
Yeah.
So like
I think that's very true,
the idea of fatherhood is changing in itself. But the really cool thing about it is that I've not just spoken to other dads. I've been able to talk to psychopsychologists. I think that's a word.
Psychopsychologist? That's a bit scary, actually.
I'm probably wrong.
Psychologists.
Psychotherapists.
Yes, that's
the word. Psychotherapists.
Sorry, psychos. We don't mean to, discriminate against psychotherapists either.
If you're psycho, let your psycho hang out. But, psychotherapists, I've spoken to, and possibly my most controversial episode was speaking to a porn addiction life coach.
Okay.
And I had a lot of men reaching out to me like, why would I listen to a woman talking about, me watching porn or me masturbating or whatever? So that was an interesting one to do. I think my most favourite one, I actually spoke with Sarah Edmondson and Nippy Ames, who live up in Canada. And, I mean, they're both celebrities in their own right. They're both in TV shows and films and whatnot. But they were the first ones to blow the whistle on the Nexium cult.
What's the Nexium cult?
So the Nexium...
I've got that right. So Nexium.
Nexium is spelt
What's that, N-E-X?
N-X-V-I-M.
V-I-M, okay, gotcha.
Yep. And so it started off as like a personal development group. And it was all about, building a business and...
Yeah, building community, building business through community, by the sounds of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it turned into this massive cult where the women... Okay, so the leader of this cult was Keith Raniere. And he was just... What's the word? Psychopath?
He was a psycho.
He was a psycho.
Yeah.
He was narcissistic. He just had all this network built up in such a way that he was able to separate everybody into like little groups, and he ended up having, and this is where Sarah got really caught up, was he ended up having a small group of women who were branded with his initials.
What, you mean like a tattoo or like an actual brand?
No, like a brand. It
like
was
hot iron.
Burnt into their skin with a cauterizing iron.
Yeah, wow.
And so I spoke to Sarah basically about, how she worked through that, because there's a whole heap of healing in that. But also spoke to Nippy, her husband, about how he managed to work through that as her husband. And then also the second half of that episode is how they've still been able to work through that trauma and not pass that trauma onto their kids, or like how to still
to stop the transaction
that from their kids.
To stop the transaction of that energy, and those emotions. Yeah, that's heavy.
And so I think that's one of my most favourite episodes I've done, is where I've sat down with them and really...
Yeah, really got into the nuts and bolts of that.
It's not just about fatherhood, it's about therapy, it's about mental health, it's about... Almost like I spoke to you last time when I was on the show, like mental health is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And whether it's through helping someone who is dealing with something, or whether it just helps somebody else understand a thought pattern differently. Or...
How to look upon their issues rather than being in their issues, They can be a really hard journey, even myself included, man. Like, being able to zoom out from my own problems has had its challenges. Oh, we got it went. Don't move, we've got another one for you. Pull the chair back in, pull that chair back in. Just managing through my own problems of, zooming out and understanding that, we're all complex beings, right? We all need that human connection. And like, if you took 10 people and asked them to stand on a football field, they wouldn't stand at equal increments apart. They would gather together. So it's evidence that shows that people need people. And unfortunately, I've experienced a few deaths in my family and friendships lately, and the commonality, or the bottom denominator that I see between those deaths was that they were hermits. They didn't have a lot of human connection. They were stuck in their own bubble, and it was assumed that they were strong people. It's just assumed, and even the strongest people need to be held in their vulnerability sometimes, and I always say, like, people don't like talk, especially blokes. It's the idea we're not supposed to talk about our feelings. We're not supposed to be emotional beings, but the reality is that we are human. We are human, and that's it. Identifying that is the first sort of step of healing what's going on, because we're going through a transition as society. The civil movements that we're going through are important. And don't get me wrong, like the Me Too movement is super important, man,
and very super important, but very damaging for men as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Because then it went from the Me Too movement to believe every woman, and it's like, well, then where do false accusations
Yeah,
get put to the wayside?
where does that line occur?
Yeah.
Where does that line occur?
You start blurring lines there.
And I think it has had a residual effect, a negative residual effect on men in general. Like all men aren't predators. Like, the most majority of people are just normal. They're not all psychopaths. There's psychopaths out there. They certainly are. To the extreme levels. Look at serial killers, for instance. They're like to the extreme level of that. But there's also people that are pulled back from that. People that are confidence men that manipulate people.
Money managers, yeah. Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone loved him. It's ironic that his last name was Madoff, which is hilarious. But but aside from that, they trusted him. He was a sociopath that did not care. He was running a Ponzi scheme and was successful at it.
Yep.
And the numbers reflected it, and everyone accepted the lie. That's how good of a manipulator he was. But that person's not a representation of the broad spectrum of men.
No.
And it's the same with women as well. Like, there's different types of women out there, and it's been known as well. If you look at court cases around the Western world about custody of children, it generally goes to women, right?
Yep.
It's this accepted thing that the woman is the best person to look after a child. And I'm not saying that there aren't cases that exist where there's a violent person in that relationship that should not be anywhere near the child or the mother, because they're a horrible person. But that's not all cases. And when you talk about those cases, even talking about it now, it would be ear pricking for people. Like, what's he going to say next? Where's the attack vector for that notion? It's even difficult to talk about it in an open and honest way. And it's risky. It's a risky conversation because you could be branded that, terrible relationship there. But there is that cult nature to it, man. There is that political divide and that polarization. Absolutely.
There really, really is.
Yeah.
And we're in a really weird state at the moment because we've got the massive feminism movement, which in my mind is no longer a feminist movement. It's a misandrist movement.
What do you mean by misandrist?
So misandrist, but everybody knows what a misogynist is, right? That's a man,
it's easily identified. Yeah.
A woman-hating man, right? Yeah. Misandry is the opposite of that.
A man-hating woman.
A man
Yeah,
man-hating woman.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, no, it's the other way around.
Okay.
Yeah.
And misandry is, women just hating men.
Okay.
And that's really what I feel a lot of today's modern feminism is it's not about equality anymore. It's about misandry. It's about tearing men down for women to be able to climb up.
Yeah, and it's that patriarchal argument as well. It's about patriarchy, right? And I think there's elements in society that, gender roles exist, man. Most bricklayers are men. Most people that build roads are men. We've built a whole bunch of stuff for people to occupy. But I guess that on the other end of it, I would say that society has advanced this far because of the general populace cooperating. And whatever level that is, whether it's gender roles or, mixing up gender roles, it's all based upon cooperation.
Yep.
If you don't, a lot of people will say that money makes the world go round. But really what makes the world go round is love. You can prove that. Like, there's 7 billion people on the planet. It's generated by love and cooperation. Yep. And there's exceptions to the rule. Don't get me wrong. There's some horrible exceptions to the rule, in fact. But that's not the mainstream motivator for perpetuation of the species, man. And those roles are changing. Don't get me wrong. And perhaps they should, and perhaps we should advance, but we shouldn't be leaving people behind. And I think the general bloke is being left behind a little bit. No,
well, that's
it feels like that. It certainly feels like that.
Well, I think that's where I'm pretty lucky, is that I'm trying to keep my circle small still. Like, I have people listening to the podcast all across the world, from Poland to Zimbabwe to Japan to the US and here in Australia too. But I try to keep a lot of what I'm talking about, like, really relevant to the everyday man. I don't want to get sucked into the PC bullshit.
Yeah.
Because that's just a rabbit hole that's not worth going down.
Well, PC is just another word for second speak, right? Politically correct means that you believe two things at the same time, really. Like, you believe, one thing to be true, but you say another thing to be true. That's what politically correct really... That's the origins, the etymology of politically correct. And it comes from communist society, being politically correct. Now we've adapted it in the Western world. In the, capitalist democratic world adapts this saying. It doesn't mean you should be an asshole. I'm not saying be an asshole. Like, if someone identifies a certain way, it's rude to say, you're not a bloke, or you're not a chick. It's rude to say that.
Keep your like I always
it's
was
uncouth,
taught to say. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, that's right. It's rude. It's rude, and you should allow people to... And that's the other thing, when you look at... Like, I was talking about this the other day, man. If you look at it from a religious point of view, I've heard some comedians out there say, like, if God's a real thing, wouldn't you want to mix it up a bit? Like, you want those agenda lines to be a bit blurred at the borders.
You want to have a bag of Skittles.
Yeah, you do. You want these different things. Like, I have... I think when you go back in time, I think, it was more about homosexuality rather than gender politics. And, some of the best people I know are gay, man. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, why is that a problem? I just don't see it as a problem. If you want to identify. If you want to recognise. And there's something I've been going through a bit lately is the racial journey, what you recognise and identify as. Because there's difference between recognition and identification, we all have different lines in us. We are all smears on the paintwork, right? Why would you want it to be bland and the same throughout? There's an argument for the nuclear family, right? Those gender roles, and people would even say, when the going gets tough, those gender roles are immediately adopted again, right? And the argument in the Ukraine, the soldiers had to stay and the women and children got to leave. The bank hostage situation, you can look at it that way. But again, I like the fragmentation. I like where we're going. Like, the stories that are coming. It's good to look at movies, right? The stuff that's coming out in the movies at the moment is so vast and variety, other than the Marvel stuff. But if you look at independent film, what they're doing in independent film at the moment is cutting edge. It is new, and it's so hard to be new. This day and age, we are a generation of reference of old pop culture. You go to the 70s, you can identify 70s as disco. You can identify the 60s as being hippie. You can identify the 80s as being, affluent and, money grabbing and the fashion from the time, the fashion from the 60s, the fashion from the 70s, the fashion from the 80s, fashion from the 90s. You get to the end of the 90s and start to get 2007. What identifies the noughties? What identifies the teens of the 2000s? What identifies the 20s and the 2000s? They're just references to the previous 5 decades.
No, because it's become dangerous to be different.
Yeah, there's no identity.
I mean, I'm an older millennial, so I was
Zennial. You're a zennial.
I'm a zennial.
I'm a zennial as well, yeah.
So I was born 86, and so I still drank from the hose, and I still came home when the street lights came on. Yeah. I still did all that stuff.
Know how to use a dial phone.
Yeah, no, I had a landline. I had a rotary phone at my grandma's house. I played cassettes and VHS, all that cool stuff, that cool analog stuff. And I watched the digital age come into play. And at 37, I feel like an old man because I cannot keep up. Like we're talking earlier about chat
GTP, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And, I can't keep up. Honestly, I feel like an old man.
Well, I still keep up, but I still feel like an old man. Because I've heard young people make references from memes, and I'd say, oh, have you seen Fight Club? And they'd be like, no, I just quoted this from a meme I saw. I go, well, that's actually a quote from Fight Club. From 1999, Brad Pitt, Edward Norton,
fantastic movie,
fucking mad movie. If you listen to Fred Durst,
even better book, really
great book. I actually noticed there was 2 differences in the book. Like most books are very different from the movie. Everyone can agree on that. But Fight Club was actually pretty close, except for
very close,
except for 2 scenes. There's 2 scenes. The ending was totally different, and how he met Tyler Durden was different. It's the only thing that's different. He meets Tyler Durden on a beach in the book. And the ending in the book is way better because
Yes.
well, look, to be a spoiler, I'll explain the end of Fight Club in the book, right? Because in the movie, he holds on to Marla Singer's hand, and he goes, "Oh, you've met me in a strange time in my life," and he becomes this leader of the revolution. That's the assumption of the ending, right?
That's right.
But in the book, he ends up in a fight and he gets his tongue bitten off. The tongue gets kicked across the ground, and as he's dying, his fear is that even in heaven, someone with a mop will push by him with a black eye and say, "We're onto it."
Yeah.
His fear is that his schizophrenia will even follow him in death, and that is a way, punchier, fearful ending.
It would have made really good for film.
It would have. They didn't push the envelope on that one. They made it a nice, safe exit.
I think, but I mean, the film overall was really, really good.
Well, it broke cinematography rules straight away with lighting. So most lighting is tungsten lighting, and they use fluorescent lighting. That's no one done that before. Before Fight Club, no one had done it. The whole idea of the protagonist being an antagonist, because they're the same person, is very. That's an unusual formula as well. It's yardstick, and I've heard people quote that are definitely millennials, or what's the new guys? The
Zoomers.
Zoomers? Are they called Zoomers?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. They're quoting a meme rather than the film, and then
Yes.
I feel like an old man.
Oh, dude, I actually put up a post on my Facebook page not long ago, the Not So Secret Dad's Business Facebook page.
Check it out, Not So Secret Dad's Business. If you're not there yet,
Check it out.
Go check it out.
Actually,
Spotify, basically anywhere you can find podcasts.
While I'm at it, Ross, I bought a present for you.
Oh, you bought a present for me?
And it's in the most microphone-safe wrapping
Oh,
ever.
is it? Oh, really?
Cellophane.
See if I can... There we go. Yeah, it's very microphone safe. Oh, you got me a shirt from this podcast, man. That's mad. Thank you very much. I'll wear this. I'll wear this next time.
I hope you like that, man. But,
yeah, great.
Yeah, look, where was I? I completely lost my train of thought.
I don't know. We're talking about Not So Secret Dad's Business. Here's the shirt, kids. Oh, it's got the back. Get a load of that. You get that one?
It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you stream your podcasts.
Well, you used to be now we're swinging to podcasts, man. You used to be on Anchor, right? But you switched. What did you swing? You switched off. You switched off.
Captivate.
Why did you switch from Anchor to Captivate? Because I find Anchor to be very good. Why the switch?
I thought the analytics would be more accurate with somebody else because they'd be pulling from different AIBs.
Yeah, okay. It's gotten better on Anchor though. It's gotten better on Anchor. It's gotten better on Anchor though.
I believe so. Yes. I was getting more Spotify stuff from Anchor than I was from Apple, from Google, from anywhere else.
So you reckon it's aggregated differently?
Okay. But it's kind of cool with Captivate because I can look at it and I can see how many different listeners have been on that day.
Yeah.
I can see what episodes are trending that day. I can see just a little more information. I got a little hung up in the numbers rather than... It's
an interesting trap to get caught up in the numbers.
I paid money. I pay... What was it? $29 a month or thereabouts for the numbers.
Yeah.
Whereas Anchor, which is now Spotify for podcasters.
Totally, yeah. Video to Spotify. Check it out.
So that's,
I was one of the first.
That's still free.
I was one of the first. Because I publish every week.
You and Joe Rogan.
Yeah, man. I was up there really quickly. And it was great because my viewership went through the roof. Because what you want to do as a video podcast, you want to change viewers to listeners. Mm-hmm. You want like YouTube, great. Like YouTube has its audience, and that's fine. But what you want is those Spotify listeners, those Apple iTunes listeners, because then you're on the commute. You want to be in the car, right? I find that's where a good place is to be. Like, with that said, though, I do get told sometimes, like, I listen to you while I sleep. So I put you to sleep? No.
I actually had one just the other day. My manager at work, he came to me and he goes, "Hey, really like your show. You should keep doing that. You're really talented." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
It is a good
Just
show,
out
man.
of curiosity, why did you stop to listen? He goes, oh, well, you mentioned you did a podcast.
Yeah.
And so it was 2 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. I went, so you needed something
To knock you out.
to knock you out. He goes, no, but I decided just to search your name in
Yeah, in whatever platform.
Google, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
He goes, and I found it, and I had to listen to it. And it's really good. Like, please don't get too good at it, though, because we need you here.
Oh, man, look, I don't need to tell anyone. It is super hard to make money in podcasting. Like, I've recently just triggered to monetize on Spotify and YouTube, but I haven't triggered it yet. Because I'm like, I've just developed this audience, and I don't want to hit them with ads just yet. But it's coming, folks. It's definitely coming. Because I've got to pay these producers one day. You know, I literally crack a whip on them. It's good that they get out of the basement, so I let them out of the basement. And they come up and they get to see a bit of daylight before the sun goes down.
Jan, have you seen the daylight today?
No. He cracked the whip extra hard today.
Yeah. So, I got the... but no, they work very hard, and I really appreciate you guys. But if I can get some sponsorship and get that monetization going soon, that'd be great. But at the same time, if you get into podcasting thinking that you're going to make money, I think it's the wrong reason to get into it. I think you need to have an inquisitive mind. Like, you need to want to be an interviewer. And interviewing people is not what not what you think it is. It's sort of like it morphs on you. It changes on you. Because here we are with headphones on. We're locked in. There's no interruptions. We've got to pass this baton around. Like, it's your go, it's my go. Where are we going to go and why are we going there? And I find I really enjoy the art of podcasting. It's something that I thought was going to be easy when I started it. Like, how hard can it be? Sort of attitude. And as soon as I started doing it, I realised, shit, man, it is pretty hard. That's just the art of it before we've done the tech. Like, we haven't done the tech on it yet. Just doing this, it can be challenging because we're putting ourselves out there, right? You're putting yourself in a position of vulnerability, and talking about things that not everyone's going to agree with you. Not everyone's going to agree with what you say. You're putting yourself out there, you know.
I don't expect people to agree with me either. And I actually want to point this out as well with my show. A big thing that I say is that I don't give advice. Because I think as a podcaster, you're given a lot of power. Like, you've got the mic right in front of your mouth. You've got people listening to you.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's my place to give advice. It's my place to ask the questions and ask where other people have been. And ask them how they dealt with it. And then, if my listener just takes a little bits and pieces from here and little bits and pieces from there, and it benefits them as a man, as a person, as a father, well then I feel like I won there.
Yeah.
But I'm not there going, I think you should be doing this, or I think you should be doing that.
Yeah, that's a bit full
You know,
on.
I always put my opinion across because, as you know, I have pretty colourful opinion.
Yeah, as we all do.
But I mean, I'm not one there to say, hey, this is how I think you should be doing things.
Yeah.
I'd rather ask how people do things.
No, I think there's a bit of a thin line though, because you're talking about numbers before, and you get caught up in the numbers, right? And getting caught up in the numbers, you shouldn't use that as a vanity thing. I think you framed it well when I was talking to you yesterday. It was about having those vanity clicks, right? I don't want the vanity click. I want someone to click on and actually listen to the conversation. And then you have your core audience, and that core audience is everything to me. I want to know what they want to listen to, and I'll move towards that market. But at the same time, there's also that tug of war. There's also the guests that I want to talk to, what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So those numbers can really pull you into the audience. But I would say to people, if you're getting into podcasting, look at the numbers as an indicator. It's not the Bible. It's not the manual to run your operation. The manual to run your operation is your passions and your drive. Your drive.
Just where you're at.
Yeah, what you want.
I mean, like I say, with the episode with Sarah and Nippy, you know, like, that wasn't one really focused around fatherhood, but there was a lot there that I thought could relate, I guess, like, you know, through parenthood, that kind of thing. But it was more the people I wanted to talk to. I'm actually, in this one, I've been trying to keep under my belt because, again, it's.
Don't say too much. Don't announce it too much. What is
it? There's a certain gentleman who's a journalist I've spoken to that is happy to record with me, and he's recently released a podcast about child exploitment.
Oh, geez, that's
material.
Heavy. Yeah, that's heavy. That's a heavy topic,
and it's a very heavy topic. But I think it's worth having the conversation about on the podcast because it's not just like it used to be when we were kids, where it's
everyone knew the
Polaroids passed around and all that. Like
it is very advanced. It's very advanced what they're doing now, and it's
kids
scary.
Playing Roblox and like normal games on smart devices, and you've got predators in your home. And
there's more predators than you think, though. That's the thing. You think they're a small number, but when I was doing news, I learned some horrific things that you go, wow, man. There are pedophile rings out there. There are people doing fucking horrible things,
and
man.
It turned out that the person running this particular ring lived in South Australia. You know, so I want to have this conversation. I don't want to have it. Not a conversation I want to be having, but I feel like it's an important one because I want to talk to him about how not only having investigated this, but having kids, 2 daughters 10 years apart, so one's 7 and one's
dealing
17.
with that content, dealing with that subject.
And he even mentioned that he couldn't hug his own daughter because he was so disturbed by this material. The line got too blurred. You know.
Wow. So, but I think that's like some of the heaviest content you can do, really, when you think about that. I must say though, we were talking about civil movements before, right? About the fragmentation of society and how things have changed for people, and we're talking about predators versus non-predators. And a good indication for me that we're on the right path. This is going to sound horrible, but you're going to have to deal with it, folks. Put it in the comments. It was Cardinal Pell, right? Didn't get a state funeral, but Father Bob did, right?
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, but but Father Bob, he was a good guy.
I was cheering that Pell didn't get a state funeral.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He doesn't deserve it.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know about Father Bob. I'm not clued
Father Bob was the guy that was with John Safran on Triple J.
Oh, right, yes.
So you got this really genuine
John Safran, he was doing some real hard-hitting stuff at the time.
And they would talk about, the idea of existence, diving right into Catholicism, Judaism, and they would banter in a really authentic, honest way.
He did that on SBS, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, no, an ABC.
ABC
Radio, yeah. Triple J.
No, he did a TV show about it.
What,
John Safran versus God.
Oh yeah, he did on that. John Safran did that on SBS. But my point is that Father Bob was a dude that was on Triple J, who was revered as Dr. Carl. You know what I mean? Like a really approachable person. He actually got demoted in the Catholic Church because of his views, so that he was suppressed in his advancement in the organisation. But then you got someone who wasn't suppressed in the organisation, who became the 3rd most powerful Catholic in the world, didn't get a state funeral, but Father Bob did. And I think that's an indicator of, things are on the right track. It's rough. It's a rough road. These acknowledgements about what people have done, and especially heinous crimes against children, these things are exposed, and the public have spoken. And that movement, because that's that fine line with being cancel culture, right? Essentially Pell was cancelled, in that respect. But then you've got this other Catholic that's actually a genuine dude that wasn't cancelled, and I think that's the real contrast. And I think that is a indicator that we're on the right path. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean because another way to look at it is we're going through an age of enlightenment. If you look back to the 16th century, you had this crazy dude, Copernicus, that was saying that planets are round, and the Earth is not the center of the universe. The first person to say that was a dude called Bruno. They burned him at the stake for saying such things. It was Copernicus that proved it, and it was Galileo that really, picked it up and really took on the church. Yeah. And that's where Protestant comes from the Catholic Church. Protestant means protest, right? So through the Age of Enlightenment, Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther, he said, well, people should be literate. They should read their own Bible. You don't need a priest to be literate and to keep the town illiterate for him to read. What you should be doing is putting the power of belief in people's hands. And that was the Age of Enlightenment. Well, guess what? Where we are now, we have this little device in our hand that is promoting freedom of ideas. But the problem with the promoting of freedom of ideas is that people, sorry about the flat earthers, sorry about this, but you have people that are perpetuating non-scientific doctrine that is inaccurate. But the only way to combat that is with better conversation. You need to have that conversation. As
a globalist, I'm happy to have that conversation.
Well, I think the irony of flat earthers is that they've wirecast, talks about flat Earth. To wirecast means it's going through satellites that are. The irony will bowl you over.
That's like all the flat earthers across the globe unite.
But I'll certainly say this: I think that flat earthers was started as a prank by two Aussies, and I think that the conspiracy theories that are around things that are actual conspiracies, Building 7, just not to be triggering, Building 7 just falling on its own. Kennedy having his head blown off, the start of the Vietnam War, the start of the Iraq War, the start of the Afghanistan War.
Is everybody at the farm listening?
Yeah.
CIA, we're talking to you.
Oh, dude, I got super paranoid the other day, man.
Dude, ISIS has to be in on it too.
No, dude, let me hit you. We were talking about analytics before. Let me hit you with these analytics out of Anchor. Out of Anchor, I found that I had all of my episodes downloaded in one day in Virginia. What's in Virginia?
It's
Langley. It's the CIA. So, surrounded in a haze of bong smoke, one could be very fucking paranoid. But with that said,
That being said, man, episode 7 of the Pagey Train, we're talking about Operation Northwoods and how George Bush used it for 9/11 because Kennedy didn't have the guts to use it for Cuba.
Well, yeah, the Bay of Pigs, man. Bay of Pigs, Kennedy pulled out. Wanted to float the dollar, wanted to disband the CIA. I think he signed his own death warrant doing that. Which is terrible because, for me, I've been chasing my DNA heritage, man, and I've learnt that I'm heavily Irish. And if you look at Kennedy, he was the first Irishman to be president because he was from Massachusetts, right? That's where the accent comes from. He's got that Bostonian accent, right? That Massachusetts accent.
And the Kennedys are American royalty.
That's right.
Let's face it.
Yeah, but again though, if you look at the Kennedys' founding of wealth, it was during Prohibition, and as well, like all of those foundings of wealth usually are tied to military in a lot of ways as well. They all served in the military, all had those networks, and were running to the.
But it was a family legacy that everybody was sticking to.
Yeah, well, look at Jack Daniels is still around, right?
Yeah.
What do you think they were fucking doing in 1920?
Same as Jameson in Ireland.
It's the same deal, right? And look at if you look at the contrast to now. Yes, we are in a stage of enlightenment, but we're also in a stage of prohibition as well. The war on drugs. You can tie yourself to another human being, jump out of a perfectly good aeroplane, sign a waiver. That's safe. But you can't go and buy weed because that's dangerous. We are in a childish posture. We're talking about religion before. With religion, they're 50 years behind. Government is 30 years behind. If you look at the people and their movement, that's where the apex is. That's the spear that is piercing new ideas. And those new ideas are, and the old hat is the energy oligarchs, and that power is moving to the the tech giants, and those movements, and they need to be corrected. Don't get me wrong. I love that Elon bought Twitter because the public square, having freedom of speech is fucking important. The problem with freedom of speech is, like, if you hear everything, you're not going to like everything you hear, and if you disagree with it, combat it with good speech.
But again, this is why.
Sorry, end of rant.
But again, I think that's perfect. You've tied it back in beautifully, because this is why I've started the Not So Secret Dad's Business podcast. Is that as we grew up as older millennials, Zennials, whatever name you want to give it.
You're 1 foot Zennial, 1 foot millennial, and I'm like both feet Zennial. I'm older. I've got grey hair.
Yeah.
I'm amazed you haven't got grey hair yet.
I've got a couple.
No, you're looking pretty fresh, bro.
You're looking pretty fresh, but I've got a couple in the beard. But
it's wisdom. It's wisdom.
The thing I miss is community.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I remember growing up, everybody in the street knew everybody. Even the adults. But like, even now, as an adult myself, even at the school run, picking Eli up or my son up on Fridays, I don't want to talk to anybody there, because
why?
I don't know them. But when I was a kid, like, community was important. Like, we went to the neighbour's house every weekend for a barbecue.
Yeah, barbecues.
There was a get together, or there was
the street gathering of kids on the corner. You remember that?
Yeah, or you all played footy in the street.
Or cricket, car for cricket, and one person would have a football, one person would have a skateboard. There'd be a couple of bikes getting
about. And you all shared it, and like everybody in the neighbourhood, like there was a community.
Yeah.
There is no community anymore. Even living in the same street.
Dude, I think it's been said before. We're living in a Bill Hicks fucking joke, man. Where we've got the pizza man that's coming up the driveway, and being attacked by Rottweilers because we're worried about diseases getting us and people attacking our children. And you question, why is the he almost made it that time, and the dude, why is the dog eating the delivery driver and not the pizza, bro? That's a Bill Hicks joke, right? And we are living in that joke of the idea that we're isolated and we're being monitored, and it's in a stage of Orwellian. But I really believe this, Nathan. I really believe this, that the butting heads of the military-industrial complex and the hippie movement, the Steve Jobs of the world that want to put music in your pocket, versus the Zuckerbergs that get an award from the CIA from being able to monitor everyone's movements. I really believe that out of that movement, humans will prevail, and it may be in the future even integrated with machines, and that's where we're going. Right, consciousness is going to shift, and if we allow our current rulers to button us down, we will be enslaved. We just will be. It's just the natural economic decision to make. People argue about the Armageddon. The fucking Armageddon is here. We are in the Armageddon. If you look at a fucking a cobalt mining fucking operation.
I read it, just saw a video on it just tonight. One of Reinhardt's mines in Perth, they've got robotic dogs following these guys, the miners, from their dongas to their workstation, in the idea of safety and security. But all that video feed that these robot dogs have been monitored, going back to HR and being monitored.
Yeah, that data has been assessed, right?
It's not safety and security.
I'll give you another example. Surveillance is a great example, right? When CCTV came out, it was a new thing where we didn't need God anymore because we had eyes everywhere. So religion went by the wayside because now we've got the technological means to actually be everywhere. If you look at union movements and what they've achieved for surveillance in the workplace, because that's essentially what you're talking about, surveillance in the workplace, right? Without a police report, you can't pull that surveillance, theoretically, right? But you go, why are you recording it to begin with? It's to record thefts or it's to record mismanagement or misappropriation. It's to catch mistakes, right? That's the idea. That they're there to catch.
That's the idea, but it's the people
foul
holding
play and mistakes.
that footage that decides whether it stays.
Is it actually being used in that context, though? And that's the argument. And my argument is, yes, they're trying to do that. They are absolutely trying to do that. We all have the device, the Black Mirror in our phone. In our pocket. That Black Mirror is in our pocket.
That microphone's always hot.
Yeah, man, and absolutely, it is. Like, we know they're listening. Cambridge Analytica proves that. They are listening. They understand our political persuasion. They know the bandwidth of those that can be converted, and in fact, be enforcers of your idea because you inflate them with the doom scroll content that they get. And don't get me wrong, I love a good doom scroll. They've actually shown. Remember when we were younger? This will blow your mind, man. This will blow your mind. When we were younger, sex was sold for everything. It's always chicks in bikinis. It was always dudes with six packs.
Cigarettes. It was beer. It was a loaf of bread. It was
milk,
like girl in a bikini. That was it.
and they did cater to the opposite sex as well. They did cater for women's sexuality as well. There's always the dude washing his car with a six pack, and it's for Yellow Pages ads that were like that. That we used to use sex everywhere.
But that was the tagline. Sex
because
sells.
The studies at the time showed that sex sells. Do you know what sells now? Outrage. They've found that outrage in the brain is more effective than sex. Because if you were walking down the street and you saw a topless woman, you'd be like, wow, oh my gosh, my attention is being grabbed, right? But if you saw someone that was being beaten up by cops innocently in the street, there are more neurons that fire in your brain than seeing the naked lady. And they've found that outrage actually is more powerful than sex. And that's when you look at all of our content now. Bud Light did it.
Outrage culture.
Outrage culture. And we call it doom scrolling, right? We call it doom scrolling for a reason, because we're looking for outrage. And we're looking for... And it's not just outrage, it's also contrast. It's more nuanced than just outrage. They'll also supplement the content with things of interest. So if you're an avid podcaster and an avid video editor, you'll get video editing clips and how-tos or whatever you've ticked like on, you'll still get that content.
Yeah.
But it will be laced with outrage. And where they place the ads in the algorithm is perfect timing for you to... Is it time to get married and buy a wedding ring? Have you thought about freezing your eggs? Have you... maybe it's time for a new car now that you're at this age. Oh, you changed your job. Maybe you can get a bigger loan on your house.
I actually made the joke the other day. I picked up my wife's phone and started talking in the bottom of it. And I said, women's therapy. And, trying to get your wife to give you a foot massage and all this other stuff, just trying to muck around and go, hey, look, like, it's probably going to pop up. Scary thing is, it probably is. You start talking about vacuum cleaners to your wife, you're going to have vacuum cleaners pop up.
Well, the argument is that
the Google and your...
Well, the tech giants will argue that the algorithm is so strong that it was onto it before you were onto it. I take the Occam's razor approach. The reality is it's listening to you, and it's been triggered, and you have content that's triggered by phrases and keywords.
Yep.
And it's feeding into that mechanism. And you got to really understand this as well. Like YouTube, right? You got to think about the server farm. Think about how much YouTube content is loaded a day. And think about how much is watched per day. Think about how much energy it costs to run the servers that capture that HD content.
Absolutely.
Think about the air conditioning to keep those servers cool. And then think about the size of those rooms. They're warehouses. So they're literally farming warehouses of content about your metadata, what you upload, what you search for, what you talk about, what your friends talk about. It's then networked into algorithms that get smarter and smarter every year. And you see it across multiple platforms. They're now remarketing platforms across different demographics. Anyone's on Facebook is a grandma, right? That used to be the new thing. Now they're on Instagram, TikTok. Big debate about TikTok because it's not owned by Western hands. But, another one we're doing at the moment is B-roll. Have you heard of B-roll? It's where you don't have a chance to take a photo and set it up. You have to take it within a minute and then post it. So it's an honest photo. Sorry, it's not called B-roll. It's called B-reel. So we've been doing B-reels because it's, you've got to be real in the moment. So they have figured out how to target different people of being content providers. And that's the difference between TV and phones. See, with the TV, it's a one-way traffic. It's only going one direction. It's going into you. Got to go for a leak?
Yeah.
All right. Let's pause it. We're back from the break, and I was talking about generations in different platforms. Like, Facebook is for older people. Instagram seems to be for not so much older people, but the young people are all on TikTok. There's a lot of, TikToking going on out there. That there's a lot of paranoia because it's not Western owned; it's Chinese owned, right? You got a lot of opinions about this. Am I stirring a hornet's nest, or?
I have very, very strong opinions on this one.
It sounds risky.
Okay. I mean,
microphone. There we go.
I have very strong opinions on this one. Yeah, no, because the Second World War is all against fascism, and I feel like there's a Third World War, and it's going to be against communism.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll tie it back into this with TikTok. Like, it's really for the Western side of the world. It's about making fun little videos and content creation and all that. But being a Chinese, the Communist Party.
But is that the paranoia of the other, though? You know how there's always the other? Is that
I
the
don't
paranoia
know.
of the other?
They seem to be more educational in China, from what I've heard.
Well, yeah, I've read into those things, like where they say, that the content streams for teenagers in China is very different in nature to those in the West. Those in the West, it seems to be dumbed down. It's more about status, aesthetics, how you look, comedy. But in China, I believe it's more about science, government movements, philosophy, which is very different. And I don't know if that's true or not.
How much of that comes into a political ideology as well?
Well, is it weaponized, though? I think that's the real question. Is it weaponized against the youth in the West versus the youth in the East? I think that's really the question. Is it weaponized?
I don't know if it's weaponized, but I do know from the two different sides, West of the East is very, very different. And you've also got to understand that we come from a very capitalist point of view, being in the West, and being a communist country with China, Russia, North Korea. A lot of the countries on the East is all about nationalism.
Yeah, okay. But you can argue that's the same case for us, though, right? Like, if you look at Google, for instance, they're collecting all our data, they're centralising all our metadata. It's just that it's done in the West, not the East. They're still a corporation.
I think this is where a lot of people
you think they're going a step
really
further?
Dangerous. Think it's dangerous with a communist country, is that.
But do you think they're going a step further, or
they are, because they've got the social credit system, and you can't go to particular restaurants.
Yeah, getting loans
if you don't have the right social score. If you don't, you've got to. It's almost like manners and politeness brought in on a national scale, or a far bigger scale than just the home.
Well, I guess the other question is with the military posture of Australia, getting these submarines, nuclear submarines, AUKUS, increasing North Force, to protect, they're saying that they're doing this to protect trade routes, right? But where are our trade routes? They're with China. So I find it a paradox. We're defending against our trade routes, but our trade routes are with those that we're defending it against. It's a bit of a conundrum. You know what I mean? Like, I find something odd with that. Are they anticipating World War III? Is that what it's really about? And if we are going to take an Anglo-Saxon solution, to the conflict. Is that the right course of action for Australia? I don't know.
I don't think Australia's best interests ever come into the play.
Well, there's that little brother
do.
syndrome. It's that little brother syndrome, right? Where the little brother, and we're not even in NATO. We're not even in it. We've participated in it, but we're not in it. We're not in the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. We are a part of the Western OCD alliance. That's true. But I think solutions for us are unique because of our geographic location, how we were founded, how we make money. How we make money. The irony is we sell iron ore to China, right? So one would argue that they're building, their fleet out of that ore. They're building that. They're building the thing that is supposed to be attacking us from the thing that we're selling to them.
I'm a welder and fabricator, and when it comes to steel, I will swear up and down every day that Australian steel is far better to work with than Chinese steel. And what pisses me off is that we are selling top-notch iron ore to the Chinese, and we're importing their scrap.
Yeah, we're getting their seconds, right? We're not getting their prime stock.
No.
They would be keeping that.
No, because that's how they're making their money. Now, this is where I feel we're kind of stuck as Australia, is that we are back in America, we're back in UK as a war ally. Like
it's the Anglo-Saxon solution, yeah.
Yeah, you need frontline men. You call the Australians, and that's the way it's always been. We've been gun fodder.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, and that's since even the Anzac spirit, right? Like, but I think surely though, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking too far out of school, but previously we've had more regional solutions. We're working with the Philippines, working with Malaysia, working with Indonesia, and that hasn't always worked out. There's all kinds of things that have gone on there, but I think that what it requires is more of a nuance, man. I don't believe we should be aiming towards war. That's for damn sure.
No, but we're also stuck in a sticky situation because we're now essentially the ones that are the main defence for the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, they got, again, though, we're a staging area, right? If you look at North Force there, they've got an American base there near Lone Pine. And there's 600 blokes there. They want to increase that contingent. If you look at where Americans have bases around the world, they're literally everywhere. It's the most military occupied scenario in history, actually. If you look at that, if you look at it as a footprint, they have many bases, many places all over the world, from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, across the equator. They are everywhere. And I draw on pop culture again. What's that film with all the puppets? The Team America.
Team America.
Yeah,
Matt
Damon. Yeah, but they're the world police, right? Not saying that I'm advocating for for Chinese military advancement in our region. I'm not, of course not. But I would certainly say that surely leading into the future, people like Elon Musk, right, where we should be becoming a spacefaring civilization. There are bigger things to do. Like climate change, for me, they call climate change a problem, right? And I think, for me, when I zoom out from that, my belief is that it's actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to just learn how to actually control the environment. We should be studying that, figuring out how to do that. Because if we can do that here, if we can terraform our own planet, that means we can terraform other planets. It gives us a knowledge and a wisdom to do it elsewhere. It's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And I think this 4-year cycle of the democracy model is severely flawed, and it's always been said to, even back to Plato, man. That's always been stated, but it's the best system that we've got. There's what's the alternative? Dictatorship, communist regimes. These are the alternatives.
All right. So to play out the devil's advocate, though, is it really the best platform we've got? Because let's really face it. CIA, please take note.
Shadow ban, straight up.
I mean, straight away, we've got to realise that as allies of the US, we have to follow in behind a two-party system set up in a failing system. Like, it's, regardless of whether it's democracy or not, it's failing.
But is it,
Right.
though? Is it failing? There's failures, but does that mean that the whole system is failing?
The American dollar is about to collapse.
Well, they are in trouble. And it's already predicted that China will be the economic superpower
So how
by
does
2025, they believe.
So how does the world superpower have a dollar collapse?
Well,
And see, this is
like other
this
dollars
is
that
where
have
we
collapsed
get
in the
into
past. It's all
sticky
based on lies.
situations, is because as an island in the Pacific, like, we have essentially control of the Pacific, and we are playing devil's advocate.
yeah, we are the man in the middle.
and the US.
We are the man in the middle, or the person in the middle. We are the thing in the middle.
So it makes you look at the bigger picture as like, what is the better?
I don't know what's better.
Meanwhile,
know.
we're stuck with a bullshit monarchy that nobody wants to break away from because we're an island full of prisoners.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. Honours and traditions, right? Like, our head of state is monarchy-based, right? There is a seat that sits in the Senate that is reserved for our royal head of state. That's a fact. You can't get around that. But, if we push to an American system where, we have a president that is the governor general, essentially, is the governor general and the president. They are a model
One and
of
the same.
Yeah, they're a model above those two houses, right? They have veto. That's what it is. That's how that system works. It is based off a Westminster. The Americans are based off a Westminster system, but the Westminster system in Australia, one could easily argue that it has been successful. Like, we have gotten to this point. It is cooperative. Even, perhaps after the Eureka Stockade, it is more cooperative because we did give them all that gold. That did happen. We did give them our resources, but now as a corporate world, right, I would say that sovereignty is totally eroded. It was eroded even back in World War II, man. Like, IBM were working on both sides. Coca-Cola, they were working on both sides, the Nazi side, the Allied side. They hedged their bets.
But again, Second World War is a big one as well. The Americans like to say that they won that, but how many Germans did they bring onto their scientific board to then set up
Von Braun, man. Von Braun.
Manhattan Project and everything.
Yeah. Even just getting to the moon, man. Most of them were Nazis, right?
Yeah.
But again, like you could argue that did the Americans win World War II? It was more Russians.
I feel
Russians
like
died.
They came in the end, on the tail end of it all.
Well, 500,000 Americans died, but 20 million Russians died fighting that war.
But
who actually won the war?
What about the rest of the Allies? What about the French? What about the English, the Australians? The New
the contingent. Yeah, the
Zealanders?
contingent. There was definitely but no, it still doesn't add up to 20 million.
No.
Like the Russians really sacrificed, man. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm talking about that point in history. Like,
they were allies against fascism.
They were.
And obviously, communists are going to be against fascism.
Well, that was the whole Cold War, right? And the proxy wars that they had afterwards, Korean War, Vietnam War.
Oh, yeah, you ask my son about them.
Yeah.
He'll tell you all about them.
But, there's these proxy wars, and there's this proxy war that's happening at the moment in the Ukraine. It's an American-funded war against the Russians, But again, it's a hard one because you can see that the border of Moscow, right? Moscow, has shifted since the Berlin Wall fell. Mm-hmm. And they keep shifting back towards their border. And if you take their position and go, well, they are feeling hard done by. I'm not saying that that's a good reason to bomb cities in Ukraine. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, well, we did poke the bear a bit there. We did poke the bear. Why did the Ukraine need to be a part of NATO? It didn't need to be. It can be its own thing. It can be, in fact, it could be a neutral country if necessary. It doesn't need to be where it is at the moment. But it seems that the issue was forced. When Trump was in, he really shut down the war against Russia. As soon as the Democrat gets in there, they're straight to it. They were literally straight to work. There's no, oh no, Pause it.
Many have to be a history buff like myself,
Mm.
but the First World War,
Yeah.
also known as the Great War.
Yeah. It wasn't the First World War at the time, no?
No,
That's
it was the Great War, and it was started by an assassination.
Yeah. They killed the Tsar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Franz Ferdinand.
Franz Ferdinand. Sounds very
Second
Aussie way
World
of saying
War was about Germany.
it. Yeah.
Sadly, a second time, but for a different reason, and that was just trying to have a perfect race. And I think that's because of one...
They did steal a lot of gold. I think it was about money.
There was a lot of money
I think it was
involved.
about the money, yeah. Reappropriation of wealth, yeah. They said the race came into it, don't get me wrong, and they did horrible things, but really they did those horrible things because of greed.
Yeah. And I think this is
Same
what
World War
we're
One.
talking about is World War III, because I think we've already had the Third World War,
Mm.
and everybody was involved in the war against terror.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Every nation in the world at one point in time was involved in that war.
Well, that's why I channel Steve Hughes, like, how do you go to war on terror? Because what does war create?
Fucking terror.
Terror. So it's at war with it. War is at war with itself, which is an interesting concept.
How do you terrorize terror?
How do you eliminate terror? It's the same as the war on drugs, man. It's really the war on people, right? That's what it comes down to. War is on people. The actual cost to war is people, whether it's civilian or military. They're all people.
I agree with you 100%. And I would go down that road every day of the week.
Yeah, but we've been doing it for millennia, right?
But we're doing a podcast right now.
Yeah, I know. Well, we can't solve all the world's woes. I know that, but it's interesting to talk about. Like, we had talking about World War One, right? It was trench warfare, and they had a new adaptation which was air warfare because they invented the airplane, right?
And the biological warfare.
And it was also chemical warfare, biological warfare. They had submarines, so it wasn't just war at sea; it was war under the sea. So there's these different spaces where war started to accumulate. By the time you got to World War Two, it's definitely about air battles. It's definitely about undersea battles. It's definitely about surface sea battles and land battles. And those land battles comprised of not just infantry but also big machines known as tanks and artillery. And when you move into the future, more spaces have existed now. So if you look at spy technology, these are satellites that are in space. It's another space of warfare. So you've got literally out of space, land, air, sea, under the sea, and now we have cyberspace. We have this other space where war exists, where we're worried about the traffic of information. And each war, if you look at it in contrast, the First World War wasn't predictable because we didn't understand the machine gun. Because we didn't understand the machine gun, we were using trench warfare to sending troops into enfilade fire. We didn't understand it. World War II did the same thing. We didn't understand the V2 rocket and how it can be so devastating where you can launch it from city to city. That was a new thing. During the Cold War, the idea of the accumulation of knowledge through espionage is a very new thing. And where we are now is a new thing again. And that new thing is beyond battle spaces that are traditional. They are new battle spaces. We were talking about it before with TikTok. Has TikTok been weaponized? Is Google weaponized? Is this the military-industrial complex butting against the freedom of being able to deliver medical care online, to being able to deliver forms online so that people can have the right information to make the right decisions about economics, geographics, land management, productivity, the analysis of how workspaces are going and how they are advancing, the civil rights movement, the gender movement. All of these things are measurable in these spaces, and I think the real new battle space is literally cyberspace. And that's the war that we don't predict. It's not going to be... I think Einstein might have been wrong a little bit about, nuclear war there, like the Third World War being nuclear. I think the real Third World War is the war of information. The war of social engineering
I think you are right there because I mean that's the biggest issue with the social credit score in China.
Yeah.
Is that everybody knows what everybody's doing? Like, what happened to? I mean,
privacy. What happened to privacy?
Yeah, I don't like secrets, but you don't talk about what our family does to anybody else. What our family does is our business.
Yeah, but
if somebody else does something different and they talk about it at school, that's their business. We don't talk about our business.
Well, I think ultimately though the sphere of privacy has moved. Like before, like when we were kids in the playground, coming home when the streetlights were on, when you like bullying is a good example, right? Bullying is a fantastic example for this. Bullying used to good. Bullying used to be stuck at school. It didn't follow you home. Now, because of the cyberspace, bullying follows you home. It's about being attacked 24 hours a day. And that's what happens to us in society as well. With the doom scrolling, we are targeted with content to put us in an emotional state in order to divide us. If you look at the polarization of every topic, of anything that anyone says, even comedians are under attack. Like, the art itself is under attack. And for me, like, in my experience in life, from being a soldier to becoming an artist, I realized the relationship between the two. Like, filming something is a shoot, firing a weapon is also a shoot. It's the
and you're still looking down a crosshair.
Yeah, you're still looking through an aperture. You still fill a camera with a magazine. You still call action. It's the theatre of battle. It's the theatre of war. Like, all of these terminologies were born out of art. Like, I don't believe that the Wright brothers, when they were flying the first flight, thought that I'm going to strap bombs to this and bomb cities. This is perfect.
I remember when you told me that about 4 years ago.
Yeah, the intersection of art and war.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what's happening now is the art is being weaponized. And that's where the fear of AI comes into it, because then the idea of the artist is now relinquished beyond human control. That's the real fear, because art seems to be the first precursor to speaking to our dreams. Like, if you look at the first films that were ever made, they were about going to the moon. They landed on the, there's films that they land on the moon, then they landed in the ocean. 60 years later, they literally did it. Well, sorry for people that don't believe we landed on the moon. But we did. We landed on the moon, and we did that in an analog space. And now we're about to go there in a digital space. We're about to embark on a. I really believe that humans at the moment are embarking on a journey to outer space and inner space. If you look at the contrast of the understanding of psychedelics, the idea of psychedelics 10 years ago would be coincided with drug use, not healing. I think that we are definitely on this journey, and there are indicators that are making it okay. Like, again, to the Me Too movement, these secrets needed to come out. Alex Jones, man, talking about, Whore Island, and everyone thought he was fucking crazy. But
I gotta be honest, man. I'm kind of a retard.
No, you're not.
I believe but that was an Alex Jones quote, and I love that clip. It's one of my favourite. Alex Jones, you're a champion.
Yeah, well, look, don't get me wrong. The Sandy Hook stuff is fucking heavy, man, and he got caught up in it. But then
he says some silly things, but on the whole, Alex Jones has it nailed.
He was right about Whore Island. He was right about a whole bunch of stuff that we thought that was kooky. He was wrong.
He was right about a lot of the Epstein stuff.
Totally. The guy that hung himself 4 times, we know that there's, if you ask someone, define conspiracy. If you ask any General Joe on the street, define conspiracy, part of their definition will involve the word theory. And not all conspiracies are theories, they're actual conspiracies. Clearly, like, someone assassinated Kennedy. Someone did that. That's a conspiracy. We've got theories about what those conspiracies are, but that doesn't mean conspiracies don't occur. They're not all theories.
It's been proven that the government creates cover-ups.
They
So
do.
why would they not cover up the small stuff?
Mm.
Why would they just cover up the big stuff?
Yeah.
Okay? I don't trust the government.
Mm.
What's being said hasn't really happened, I believe. I believe the official record is wrong.
Mm. Well, let me ask
But
you this. Let me ask you
there's
this.
just-
You're a parent, right? Have you ever lied to your child?
For the last 7 years, because Santa's real.
So you lie. Yeah, we lie to our children about these ideas, right? Ideas specifically. To
And
that.
I agree with you. I'm a parent. I control that child and what that child believes.
So if
And I tell it what I want. Why wouldn't the government do the same
That's
thing
right.
to me as a grown-ass
because
man?
you have agency because you need to look after the kid, right? You have agency over their welfare. And that's what a government is. It's agency over welfare. They even call it welfare. That's what it is.
Yeah.
If you go to the hospital, you get hurt. You go to the hospital. You hurt yourself. You go to the hospital. You lose your job. You turn to the government. They help you out. Right? We can argue that the help is inadequate or it's not as good as it can be. We can have those arguments, but that's essentially what they are. They are someone that has agency in our development and welfare. Like schools are framed by the government. Universities are framed by the government.
Absolutely.
The way that corporations operate are formed by the government. Like, there's an old saying, like, don't take on the crown, because the crown's been here for 200 years, man. It's always won the argument.
But for me, this is the big part of being a parent.
Mm.
Is that we are the ones that are meant to be teaching these kids.
That's better.
I got an up and got it down. I didn't get a few. Look, I mean, the world is a mess.
Mm.
As parents, we need to be raising our kids the way we feel is the right way.
Yeah.
And I think the PC bullshit that's out there, the politics, like the world is a mess. We know that.
But hasn't it always been a mess? Hasn't it
But
always
it's
been a
always,
mess?
but again, it's always been a mess. Kennedy was assassinated.
Well, I think it's less of a mess
there
than
was-
it is before, though. I think it's less than a mess. That's how all these
I
people
think
are here.
we know it's more. We know it's a bigger mess than we used to think it was because of social media. We have that connection. We know
Yeah, those
the
optics,
world's a
yeah.
mess.
Well,
We didn't have that connection before. Now we're at a point where, okay, the whole world is a dumpster fire, and we really need to come back. And this is where I feel we need to come back to smaller community and just worrying about our people. The saying is it takes a village to raise a child.
it's true. That's how we were
And we
raised.
need
That's
to
how we
bring
were
it
raised.
back to our village
Yeah.
and forget about everything else.
I
out
know,
there.
but there's a lot of content out there for kids that can be taken on an iPad while the parents are doom scrolling. That does exist. That is a thing. And I go, is that a weapon? Is that a weapon against us?
And
slowly
that's-
eroding away at our freedom.
And that is on those parents. It's not on me.
Well-
All I'm saying is that I feel, as
Ask-
parents, we need to be aware
Ask any social
of
media
what
executive.
these kids are using, the devices, the apps.
But here's
We
an
need to be
indicator for you. Ask any executive that's involved in social media. Ask them if their children have a device, and most of them say no. And that's an indicator. And another indicator for me is if you look at, we're in an unprecedented time. There's 4 generations at the workforce at the moment. That's never happened before. The elderly are in the workforce. And the younger people, there's child labour, right? So if you look at the contrast of humans at the moment, the age bracket of the workforce used to be, up to 60. But then you would even have people that are outside the workforce leading up to 60. So it's actually, the medium is smaller than that. It was around 50 because the life expectancy was lower. But now we have 4 generations in the workforce. It's never happened before. Never in human history, ever. Not that we know of. If you look at our ancient apocalypse, maybe it's possible prior to 12,000 years ago. But as far as we know it, this has never happened before. We are certainly in the age of glass. And people always look at me and go, what do you mean the age of glass? Well, I'll tell you. If you, all of the transmission of this podcast is going through a fibre optic. It is transmitted on glass, because that's what a fibre optic is. It's going into homes that are surrounded by glass, skylines that are, the literal skylines of our cities are made of glass. We had the age of steel, we had the age of oil, we've had the age, the Bronze Age, the Stone Age. I really believe that the silicon chip itself is made from glass. That's what silicon is. We're in this age of information, and we're certainly in this enlightenment, but we have to be vigilant. I really believe that we have to be vigilant not to let the military-industrial complex win. Again, I don't want to sound like we shouldn't be someone that defends our nation. We should defend our nation. We should have clandestine forces that are monitoring people that are dodgy. We should have forces in case someone goes, I want to steal your shit. We should have a force that goes, you're not stealing our shit because we've got this shit that says no. Absolutely. We should definitely have a military-industrial complex. What we shouldn't do is allow that to bleed into the general society, because what are we defending to begin with? We are defending freedom. True freedom is for us to disagree. True freedom is for us to agree. True freedom is to be able to say what you want to be able to say without inciting violence. True freedom is to pursue your dreams. And I think that we all should be in fear of losing that potential of pursuing our dreams. If
we lose any of that, we lose freedom.
Yeah, it's ours to lose, right? If you don't use your freedom, you will lose it.
Absolutely.
You have to stand up. We have to stand up, and like, there's been riots in Australia over during COVID, and there was some of those riots where I looked at and go, man, that's really horrible and sad. But there was part of me that goes, well, at least those people are standing up for what they believe in. They're not necessarily everything that I believe in. They may have aspects of what I believe in about expressing freedom, but they should have the right to protest and to right to public assembly. You should have the right to, not be attacked by someone who's dressed ready to invade Poland with a taser if you're 95 years old. There's limits. And I think we need more education, more understanding. We need to explore inner space just as much as we explore outer space. And I think we're in an interesting time. And especially our generation, the generation that's in this room, there's a bit of a contrast, a little bit of age difference, but nonetheless, from the same ilk, the same space.
We got it, haven't we, Jan?
Yeah, no, Jan's all right. You're all right, Jan?
I'm all right. I'm
See,
still
happy.
here. I'm still here.
He's happy. No, but I really do believe that. I believe that we don't need to go back to our traditional gender roles, but we certainly need to go back to the idea of cooperation, and we can cooperate.
And that's a big thing for me as well, is teamwork. Like, everybody has their part to play.
Yeah.
And that's why I come back to community. That's why I come back to dads talking to each other. I talk about.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I'm really stoked to have you on the show, Nathan.
It comes back to trying to tie everything in. And like, the world is scary, man. Like, don't get me wrong. I love everything with world politics. I think it's amazing that the US... Not that it's amazing. I'll rephrase.
Profound.
It's profound. Everything that's happening in the world at the moment, with the US dollar about to collapse. Do you want to take a bet on it?
We can take a bet on it. You're going to bet the US dollar collapses? I'll bet you $1.
I thought it was going to happen last month, so I'm already in the red.
They already got another loan, but how many loans can you get before it goes sour? Yeah.
I don't know. Last I checked, they had 3 trillion. So if they got more than that now.
Nah. Australia's 1 trillion, right? We're 1 trillion.
Even so,
with inflation happening too.
I don't see us running off the one. So our dollar will collapse at some point. And I think, look, the world is shit. The world sucks. Right? There are bad people out there. There are things outside of our control. But what we can control are our community, the people we're with, the people we share our...
How we deliver energy.
To.
Yeah, how we share our truth. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to say it, actually. How we share our truth. How we tell our story. What is our narrative? Where are we situated in the zeitgeist of where the world is going? And I think Australia is a very unique place. It's so remote, but so influential. And I think that we should definitely come up with a hybrid model of how we solve our regional problems. Does it require an Anglo-Saxon alliance? Probably. But does it require other alliances that are more geographic to us?
But what I'm saying
that took
is,
forever. That's the longest time it took for a mic knock.
What I'm saying is that it's not even the political issue. It's a community issue. It's a one-on-one issue. It really is community. It's not a political.
Well, do you think psychology ties into that? Like the human psyche, like where we feel as people?
Hey, Jan, have we got another 3 hours?
No, we can do another 10. We'll do another 10. We'll get another 10 out. You can get this one out. You'll be right. You've been smashing it, bro. I love you, Nathan. Man, no, like before you go on, like, allow me to show indulge me for a moment.
Wait, who's cutting this apart?
Nobody. There's nobody. It's just yarn. You mean the film? You mean the podcast? No, we're raw, baby. It all goes on. It all goes up. No, but allow me to indulge. Allow me to indulge, man. From the journey that we had as friends from that pub where we were talking conspiracy theory, to getting you on as a producer and showing you the ropes and how to do technical stuff, to you doing a podcast about men's health, men's mental health, and you know, and other things. It's not just about that. I know that, but that's the main thing about it. And the people that you've reached, like, I can see from your content that you've had a positive effect on people. And to be a part of that it gives me joy, man. I'm really stoked for you. And if I could be someone that tells you to keep going, because what are you up to? Episode 85, 90, where are you up to?
I'm up there somewhere.
You're about to pass, 100 episodes.
I'm pretty sure I'm over 100.
I always said to people, like, 100 episodes of a podcast really teaches you as a podcaster, because you've got to do those 100 episodes because
it takes time.
It takes time. It's not something that is easily admitted. You have to acquire it, and that's a technical way to acquire it, and there's the art form itself to acquire. So allow me to just show me appreciation, man. I really love what you're doing at Not So Secret Dad's Business, because I think it ties into a void. There's a void there that you're feeling, and there's others doing it too. You're not the only.
I'm not the only one. I'm definitely not the only one. I've made a lot of great podcast friends, like dads who are podcasters who have their own fatherhood podcasts. Like, there is definitely a niche out there.
Well, I certainly find it to be authentic. Your podcast is very authentic and heartfelt, and it comes from a place of honesty. It comes from a place of understanding. It comes from a place of risk as well. That's what podcasters forget. A lot of risk involved in a podcast, because you've got to put your heart out there. You've got to be honest. You've got to say controversial things sometimes.
It's very much like this. We sit down, we talk to each other face to face. We just have a conversation. And then we take that conversation and bang it on the internet. Whether somebody likes it or not, the way I see it is fuck them. Because it's not their conversation. It was mine.
Yeah, I guess I have a paradox with it. I find it to be selfless and selfish. So it's selfish because, like, I learned something tonight. Like, I learned about different platforms. I learned about I got a deeper understanding of your podcast. I learned something, from fellow to fellow. And I know, like, I give that as well. Like, I give out information, right? I learned something. That's my selfish part of it. But my selfless part of it is I'm going to publish it and go, I hope someone else gets something out of this. Like, I hope it's beneficial to them. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, I say go for it. When I started, there was less than 1 million podcasters. Now there's 3 million. It's a growing platform. It's beyond those. We were talking before about social media platforms. Podcasting's beyond that. It's that long form content that can be nuanced, generalized. It's really the wild west of content. And I find it exciting. It's very rock and roll in nature.
Yeah, but then you've also got the young ones that are like, oh my God, I've just realised podcasts are big. I'm going to make so much money. Podcasting isn't about money. And that's the biggest thing I've learned.
It can be.
It can be. But that shouldn't be what drives it.
No, it should be curiosity, passion.
It should be creation. It's I don't know. It's all about putting something out there that you want to put out. It's nothing else should be driving you to podcast.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with filmmaking or writing music, whether it be lyrics or melodies or whatever you do. If you're a creative, I think you should be doing it for you first. And then if you're putting it out there, then you get a secondary
that's
feedback from it.
That's the residual, yeah.
And like you said, it's the people stopping and listening to what you're putting out, or they're leaving the reviews, or they're reaching out to you and going, hey, I resonated with this bit. Thank you for putting that out.
Yeah.
It means the world.
Well, I have my, don't get me wrong, I have my 30 listeners that listen every week. Thank you guys. Keep listening, keep watching. But you usually get about 100, right? Sometimes you get 1,000, right? But it's those 30 listeners that I go, man, I want to turn that into 100 so I can have a positive influence with the guests that I have on about what they're doing as podcasting, what they're doing as an actor, and creating that availability, that accessibility to going, you know what? You are worth it. If you've got desires to do so, just give it a shot, man. Give yourself the right to fail. You're not going to win every time. We were talking off air before, I did an interview with Peter Garrett, right? And I was supposed to deliver it back to the TV station.
Oh, look, I've done that before. You don't hit record and you get to the end and go, fuck.
And there's the producer that knocks over the camera and you'll be like, oh, shit, man, But you can't feel bad about that forever. I guess what my message is to appreciate the positive impact you have. And that may be only 10 people in a room. That may be only 5 people in a room. But that number will grow if you're being real. And if you become a better conversationalist, if you become a better interviewer, but realise it's not just an interview. It's a give and take. Everyone is driving the ship of conversation, and I would only ask for people to participate that. And if you think it's entertaining, put it out there on the internet. Give it a go. What have you got to lose?
And this is where I'm at in today's world as well, is that you can't have conversation because everybody has to be PC. I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck whether it's PC or not. Tell me what your opinion is.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at. That's why I podcast. Tell me what your opinion is.
Well, speaking of podcasts, where can we find your podcast, Nathan?
Everywhere. You can find it on Apple. You can find it at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer. You can find it on Google Podcasts. You can find it on Spreaker. You can find it absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, so if they're looking for it, where can they do a search for it? What are we looking at here?
Not So Secret Dad's Business. Not So is in the brackets because it's not a huge secret.
Yeah.
But
well, it's not a secret here today, that's for sure. And you got an Insta as well? You're on Instagram, yeah?
Yeah, I'm at Not So Secret Dad's Business, and Facebook at Not So Secret Dad's Business. We're all the same.
All right, fantastic, man. Allow me to thank you again, man. I've had an absolute ball talking to you today, and I'm really proud of your podcast, man, because I think it really does fill that void, and it's participating in a really positive conversation, so thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right, guys, you've been watching The Pagey Train. You can check us out on Spotify. That's right, video on Spotify. Or you can check us out on YouTube, and while you're there, don't forget to subscribe. And if you avid listeners out there, you can find us on Apple iTunes or iHeartRadio. Basically anywhere you can find podcasts. You've been watching The Pagey Train, and we'll see you next time. Man, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm not thrilled with it. I'm like, I made...
Dude, you should be thrilled with it. You should be thrilled with it.